Hello everyone and welcome back to our Python for Data Analysis course. Today we are going into filtering data with Boolean indices, and I'm going to run through this notebook with you and show you how to filter your data in your data frame based on certain options that you would choose, which would create Boolean indices. Now, Booleans, if you are not familiar with them, are either true or false. And so we're going to create some conditions and use those conditions, which are either true or false, to filter our data. So the first thing that we do is we import our libraries. And so if you have any issues with this syntax, you can go back to the previous videos to look at when we talked about importing libraries. So we're going to import pandas as PD. And then we're going to read our data set, which is the no-show appointments data set, into our data frame. So we are using pandas read CSV method, and we are reading the CSV file into and storing it in this variable. So when we do that, we can call the head method on DF hospital appointments, and that gives us the first 5 rows of our data. And so here we can see that we have the patient ID, appointment ID, the gender, whether they are male or female, the day that they scheduled the appointment, the day of the appointment, their age, the neighborhood that they live in. And this scholarship is some kind of special welfare program. And so a 0 shows that the person doesn't have it, and a 1 shows that the person has it. And then these are various diseases like hypertension, diabetes, alcoholism, or handicap. And so a 1 means that this person has hypertension, a 0 means that they don't have it. And then over here is SMS received. Did they receive a text message or not? And then whether they showed up for the appointment or not. And so the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call the tail method. And that will show me the last 5 lines of our data set. The next thing or method I'm going to run is the info method, and that gives me more information or data about the number of entries or rows, and then the number of columns, and then the types of the data types of the columns that we have. And so this is telling me that we have 110,527 entries, and we have a total of 14 columns. And of the 14 columns, patient ID, appointment ID, age, and these other columns are integers. And then we have objects, which act like to store like strings. So you have the neighborhood, you have the gender, you have the schedule, the appointment, they all stored as a string or an object in this case. Now, imagine we wanted to create a sub data set that took only males or only females. And so this would be like a sub data set that we're going to filter based on a categorical variable. And so the first thing that we need to do is create Boolean indices for the male or female records. And the way we do this, and this we've talked about this kind of syntax in the previous videos, we take our data frame, and then this is the column that we want to create our Boolean indices on. And so what you can do before you run this piece of code is you want to see what options are available. Now, we know that gender has to be male or female, but one thing that you always want to do is you want to inspect your data to make sure that there are no data quality issues. And so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at gender, and I'm going to use the value counts method to see what the options are. And so this is showing me that of the 110,527 records, there are 71,840 female and 38,687 male. Now, another thing that you can probably do is to figure out what the statistics are. And so if we do DF hospital appointments, gender, and then value counts, and then we access the first element, I got the spelling wrong here. That gives us the female count. So we can store this in a variable called female count. And then we can do the male count. The male count will be the second index in here. And so we can do the value counts, and that gives us the male count. Just a second. It's hospital appointments. All right. And so if we do male count, that gives us the 38,687. And so if we want to find the percentage of, females, what we can do is simple. We can do female count divided by male count plus female count times 100. So we can do female count times 100. And so it shows that there's roughly about 65% of females in this data set. And then we can do the same for male count. Find the percentage of males in this data set divided by male count plus female count. And so that's about 35.002. So if we should add these two, we should get 100%. So we can say female percent. We can store this in a variable, and then we can call this male percent. And then we can add the two, female percent, and that should give us 100. Not equal to, we're adding. That's interesting. It gives us 129. Male percent plus female percent. All right, so that was odd. It should have given us 129. So I'm rerunning these cells. And so male percent plus female percent gives us 100% like we're looking for. So one thing that you can do is you can incorporate testing into your code, and that's a topic for maybe another day. But if you use the assert and then so using the assert, we are comparing two sides of the equation. And so we needed to put a double equal to sign. So it's supposed to return a true or a false. And so if male percent plus female percent is equal to 100, it should return a true and there should be nothing in the output. But if, for example, we made a mistake and then maybe type 101 over here. So what that means is male percent plus female percent is not going to be 100. And so we have an assertion error. So this is like a way to incorporate testing into your code. Now let's change this back here. And then there's no output. That means that, our male percent and female percent adds up to 100. So what we can say is print there is percent of males in this data set and percent of females, and then we do a dot format, and then we put male percent and then female percent. So this says that there are 35.0002% of males in this data set and about 65%. So another thing that we could do is we could, there are ways to choose the number of decimal places and things like that, but that's beyond the scope of this course. It's something that you can research in how to format strings. And so in this section, the goal is to look at creating Boolean indices. So let's go straight to it. And so I'm doing DF hospital appointments. I'm selecting gender. And I'm saying that if gender is equal to M, it should return a true. If not, it should return a false. So if I run this code, what it's telling me is that it's going to look at every record in our data set and then pick out. So record 1 is saying that it's a male, and that's true. And record 0 is a female, so that will be false. So if we go here, we can see that the first record is a female. The second one is a male, female, female, female. So it will be false, true, false, false, false. And so that matches the output that we're getting for the first 4 lines. Now I'm going to store this in a variable called male index. Then I'm going to do the same with the females. So you can see that the female it's like the opposite of the male. And I'm going to store this in a variable called female index. Now, in order to pick out all the males and from the hospital appointments data frame, this is the way that you pick it out. So I put the male index in square brackets and say DF hospital appointment, just pick out the male indices and store it in this variable called DF male hospital appointment. And then I do the same for DF female hospital appointments. And I've put another test here, which is saying that if I add the number of rows of the male hospital appointments to the number of rows of the female hospital appointments, I should get a total number of hospital appointments in the hospital appointment data set. So since it doesn't return, any value, that means that this assertion ran correctly and our data or the way we split our data set is correct. Now we can do the value counts, and we see that for the male is 38,687, which is the same thing that we got when we did it on the full data set, 38,687. And then for the female is 71,840, which is the same number here. So I rerun it here, and then there we have it. Now, it's not only categorical variables that you can create Boolean indices on. You can do it with numerical variables. And in this example, I'm going to use age. So I'm going to create a data frame with the age of the patients that are over 65. So I'm saying that, so I'm picking out the age column from the hospital appointments data frame. And I'm saying that if it's greater than 65, return a true. Otherwise, it should be false. And then I go ahead and store that in the over 65 index. And then I go ahead and I put that index into my data frame and store it into a new data frame called the over 65 appointments. Because maybe we want to do an analysis on only those who are over 65 and then look at maybe the different diseases that they have or whether they showed up or didn't show up. And so another thing that we can do here as an example is plot the gender of, that group that's over 65 And so over here, what I'm doing is I'm picking the gender and I'm counting the values and I'm creating a plot of kind bar. Now we've gone through the basic plotting in some previous videos, so you should be able to take a look at it and then be able to understand what the syntax means. So essentially we're saying that this is the number of females slightly above 8,000 that are over 65, and the males over 65 in this particular data set is roughly around 4,000 males. So this brings us to the end of this video on filtering data. Go ahead and type in the code by yourself, and also go ahead and look at other examples online. And the key is to practice, practice, practice. Thank you.